The United States was walking a fine line in the months preceding its entry into World War II. America wanted to stay out of the war, but was involved in aiding its European allies. The U.S. was helping to arm Great Britain and Russia through a Lend-Lease program and was helping train British pilots. The U.S. was also taking economic sanctions against Japan. War was a possibility for the U.S., but it became a reality on December 7, 1941. Life was good in Hawaii in the early 1940s for American sailors like Paul Goodyear. He and his shipmates aboard the USS Oklahoma performed maneuvers and maintenance during the week, took liberty on the weekend, and enjoyed the laid-back island atmosphere. For farm boys like Goodyear, it was paradise. The war in Europe was half a world away.
It was a good ship. The officers were honest and fair, and it was considered a happy ship. It was a good ship to have duty on.
In just 11 and a half minutes on December 7th, 1941, at Pearl Harbor, everything changed.
Like any other Sunday morning in Hawaii, beautiful sunshiny day, and we had come in on Friday night, and I'd had liberty on Saturday, and I had the 8 to 12 watch on Sunday morning, and we saw a line of planes, maybe 6, 8, 10, I really don't know how long it was, but they were flying from our starboard to our port side about a mile ahead of us. And as they got almost ahead of us, the first plane dropped a bomb. A minute later, the second plane dropped a bomb. Well, as the third plane dropped his bomb, there was a miniature ball of firelight. And I had a pair of 750 binoculars, and I put them to my eyes, and that meatball hit me right in the eye. And right then we knew it was the Japanese.
A few minutes later, another line of planes launched a second attack. And Goodyear plunged into the oily waters.
When I dropped off, the ship was still 90 degrees, so I just stepped off and dropped in the water and swam to the Maryland. This is only a 50-foot drop, so. And at that time, I didn't even worry. If it had been 500 feet, I think I would have jumped.
With dozens of heads bobbing around him and bullets hitting above him, Goodyear swam to the safety of the Maryland and watched the Oklahoma's mast roll over into the water. 429 sailors and Marines perished in the watery tomb that was the Oklahoma. The second greatest number of casualties suffered by the 9 battleships in the harbor.
The Japanese have attacked Pearl Harbor, Hawaii by air, President Roosevelt has just announced. The attack also was made on all naval and military activities on the principal island of Oahu.
I knew it was a war, and I knew I was going to be there for the rest of it if I lived.
We interrupt this broadcast to bring you this important bulletin from the United Press. Flash, Washington. The White House announces Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor.
The attack on Pearl Harbor stunned the nation and left America no choice but to enter the war.
The facts of yesterday and today speak for themselves. I believe that I interpret the will of the Congress and of the people when I assert that we will not only defend ourselves to the uttermost, but will make it very certain that this form of treachery shall never again endanger us.
Goodyear served out World War II aboard other ships in the South Pacific, but he returned to Pearl Harbor and the Oklahoma 2 years later. The ship had been righted, and armed with a flashlight, Goodyear went back into the pitch-black crew compartment to look for 2 items he had left: a ring intended for a lady friend and $130.
It was just one big room, and we all shared the same area. And when I saw those bones down there, I knew very well that I knew a lot of those kids. Of course, there was no identification because there was just piles of bones, and they were just commingled all over the place. That's as far as I could go. I couldn't go any farther, so I never did get the ring or the $130. So, but I got out alive. That was the main thing.
We're back in Honolulu, actually Ford Island, which is situated in the middle of Pearl Harbor, and this is where the Japanese attacked the United States Pacific Fleet on the morning of December 7th, 1941. If you're just now joining us, we're in the middle of an interactive webcast, and for those of you who are students and are participating in our webcast, we'd like to hear from you. We'd like to see your questions, and we'll pass them along to the veterans who are joining us now. And it's my pleasure at this point, a great honor, to introduce 2 of the survivors of the USS Oklahoma who are with us today, and they're ready to talk to you. To my right is Paul Goodyear, who is from Casa Grande, Arizona, and originally from Michigan, one of the survivors. And on my left is George Brown, who had the shortest trip to get here. He originally was from Kentucky, but now lives in Hawaii and didn't have very far to come. But it's good to have you here, Mr. Brown.
Thank you.
Good to have both of you here. Paul Goodyear, I want to talk to you first. You've been one of the driving forces behind this memorial. I know that's true. Why is this so important to have a memorial to the USS Oklahoma here in Hawaii?
Well, we're the last combat ship that was here that does not have any memorial to the kids that died, and we had the second highest casualties and probably some of the most traumatic deaths of that day, because our kids didn't die a fast, easy death. They were trapped, and can you just imagine, and that's something that bothers every one of us to this date, is those, can you imagine yourself trapped in a pitch black, airless compartment, knowing for hours that every breath you take is going to be just shorten your own life? And it's traumatized most of us for many, many years, and we feel very slighted that those kids haven't been memorialized, and we think it's about time that they were.
And that will change tomorrow at noon here in Hawaii. Mr. Brown, I want to ask you about this memorial and this place. You have lived here now for many years. How special is this place to people who live here in Hawaii, here in Honolulu?
Well, it's very special to, I think, everyone. And it's the most visited place you will see in any park. They get over 150,000 people at the Arizona Memorial every year, and it never ceases. And I occasionally go down and greet the people as they come in, but the line is so long for them to get here. They intend to come here when they come over to Hawaii.
Let's now go to our students. I think we have some students who are ready to provide us some questions, at least I hope so, and we're going to call on Stillwater first. Do we have a question from Stillwater?
At this time, we don't have a question formulated yet.
Nothing from Stillwater. Let's move on then. Perhaps Stillwater will have a question in just a few minutes. Deer Creek, aloha. You have a question.
Just 1 second. Okay. Let's hear it in front. Do you want her in front of the camera? By the microphone. Okay, Sarah, come right here.
Aloha.
Aloha. What is your question from Deer Creek?
I'm asking if you still have troubles remembering Pearl Harbor.
Who would like to take that? Do you still have trouble remembering Pearl Harbor? Remembering Pearl Harbor.
Remembering the
Absolutely
people
not.
at Pearl Harbor.
Has that so ingrained in the back of their mind that it'll never disappear. In fact, we have one of our survivors who lives in eastern Texas who is very mentally depressed right now, but he can't remember his wife, he can't remember his family or anything about his past life, but he can remember that half hour. And I know in my mind I can recall every second of that 10 minutes, although I can't remember what I was doing yesterday or what I'm supposed to do this afternoon. So yes, I do think that it does have a great deal of effect on all of us now.
And I can attest to that. When I met Paul Goodyear and interviewed him a couple of months ago, I asked that very same question. What do you remember about that day when Pearl Harbor was attacked? And he said, everything. Let's move on. Thank you for that question. Let's go to Mustang Valley. Do you have a question?
Yes.
All right, go right ahead.
Did any woman serve on the ship?
George Brown, you want to take that question? Did any women serve on the ship?
No. That came much later when they authorized women to serve on the ship.
But it did eventually happen.
Yes.
Was that during the war, World War II, or did that come later?
Come later. Much later. I wouldn't know how to react with women on the ship.
Fair enough. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Thank you for that question. Let's move on now to the State Department of Education. Aloha.
Aloha.
Good morning or good afternoon, as it is in Oklahoma.
Yes, this afternoon, we would like for just to defer to students and let students ask questions.
All right, fair enough. Thank you very much. Let's move then to McLean. Aloha from Hawaii. Do we have a question from McLean? This is your opportunity.
They can see us.
They can't. Right there.
What students? Us? Like me? What?
Say aloha.
Aloha.
I have a question. All right, we're going to come back. It sounds like you're working on a question, but not quite there yet.
Oh, no, we have a
so now
question.
let's move to Asher.
Wrong thing, dude.
Huh?
McLean? Okay, McLean, are you ready now?
Yes, we have a question. The question we want to know about the war is, how did the war affect the people at Pearl Harbor after the war and the soldiers and all?
So how did it affect the people here after the war?
Yeah, how did
George Brown, I'm going to give that question to you. How did that affect the people here in Hawaii after the attack and after the war?
Pretty hard to say. During the attack, I think the people actually participated just like the military, and they were involved, and many of them got killed. But after the war, they finally went back to their routines, and it wasn't a big change for them because actually it created more jobs for them to be able to survive.
The attack on Pearl Harbor resulted in the deaths of 2,400 Americans, 68 civilians, and the people in Hawaii, the Americans in Hawaii, were called on to make certain sacrifices after the attack and during the war, including blackouts here in town. They did some other things, as all Americans did, to contribute to the war effort.
Right. And they had gas rationing and actually food rationing over here. It's very difficult because everything that we get over here is shipped in. And it makes it very difficult for even the military. Right now, they have built one of the largest exchanges in the world for the Navy.
All right. Paul Goodyear, would you like to add to that?
Well, when I got off the Oklahoma and swam to the Maryland and then to Ford Island, from there on for 4 months I was incognito because I never got back on the payroll until April, so I've had very little chance to communicate with Honolulu or Hawaii or anything else, with no clothes, no money, no identification or nothing. I was not in the Navy for 4 months, so.
You had to borrow some clothes, actually, didn't you?
Well, I borrowed them on a no-return basis. we borrowed food that way, too, because they wouldn't let us into the mess hall for a couple of weeks. So we borrowed food and clothing and guns and ammunition and blankets and whatever we thought we needed.
You did what you had to do to survive.
That's right. We survived on midnight small stores. We even stole a truck.
And that happened right here.
Well, right on Ford Island, right within 50 feet of where we're standing right now. And you know what? There were a lot of thieves on Ford Island at that time because everybody tried to steal our truck.
Really?
Yeah. They had no morals at that time.
But you didn't let them do it?
Absolutely not. We used to strip that thing every night.
Thank you for your question.